Welcome to Listen to Coach with myself, Coach Jake Doan, and it's brought to you by Show Muscle, Go Muscle Training. Let's see what I have for you in today's episode. Let's dive right in. Today's topic of conversation is going to be the most efficient method for fat loss. And it's going to be kind of a two-part podcast today because we're going to be talking about the 6 ways to stay consistent with your weight loss diet. That's a lot of S's. So I'm going to be very clear. The most efficient method for fat loss is always going to be a combination of a healthy diet and regular exercise. There is absolutely no one-size-fits-all method for fat loss. There's no best approach. There are methods you can put in place for fat loss, but it's all going to depend on your individual needs and goals. And there's so many considerations that we have to take into account as a personal trainer when we talk about these things. So today I just want to be very clear. It's very general terms for your fat loss. And I'm saying fat loss. I'm not saying weight loss. In the personal training world, we can talk about weight loss in terms of sports like wrestling or powerlifting, where you need to be below a specific weight. You don't necessarily want to have fat loss. You want to make sure that your weight and your actual body weight is lower. So that would be considered weight loss because we can be reducing something like water to fluctuate weight. So here are 9 strategies to help you lose body fat effectively. Number 1 is eating a balanced diet. A healthy diet that's rich in nutrients and is usually low in added sugars and unhealthy fats is going to be key to successful fat loss. So you want to set your focus to having whole, unprocessed foods like fruits, vegetables, and lean meats, and healthy fats. Now, notice that I'm not saying to cut out entire food groups. The common trend in the health and fitness world seems to be that we are picking food groups out of hats and excluding that food group or making sure that that's the only food group that people are focusing on. Remember that these diets have to be marketable, and you can't go and do something that someone's already done when you're creating a new methodology. These things have to be sexy. They have to be brand new and shiny for people to get excited about them. So remember that when you see the next diet or big trend coming about. Now, off the top of my head, the most common diets that I can think of are vegetarian or vegan diets, ketogenic diets, low-carb diets, or more recently, the carnivore diets that I would say that are most popular. Now, I'm not saying these diets or methodologies are incorrect. What I'm saying is that generally speaking, people will benefit from a more balanced and unrestricted diet than focusing in on one macronutrient as their sole focus. One commonality you'll notice is that most of these diets are not restricting your consumption of protein. Actually, more often than not, they're focused in on making sure that you're consuming enough protein. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is that I am saying things like in general and not specifically, because I need to be very clear. I should not be telling everyone how they should be consuming food because I don't know the consumer right now. I don't know who's listening. And as an individual, you are so different from myself or the next person that your consumption of nutrients should be very different. Now, I call them considerations, and they're things that I need to think about anytime that I develop someone's nutritional guidance or advice. Those considerations can be someone's history with activity or training, injuries, their environment, their mindset, movement, obviously their nutrition, their sleep and recovery. These are all considerations that need to be made when someone is starting a fitness and health journey. So if those are factors that are not being taken into account in someone's program for you as an individual, then maybe it's not the best program for you or best trend for you. So make sure that you consider that next time you're considering a new nutrition program or diet that's trending. Okay, so I've talked enough about number 1. I can do a whole nother podcast separately on that. If there's more interest in the future, I'll do so. But for now, we're going to move on to number 2, and that's getting regular physical activity. Now, exercise is obviously going to be a very important component in fat loss, and It's going to help you obviously burn calories, and eventually we want to boost your metabolism. Big hit word right now. But the factor here is we want to, generally speaking, aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise per week. Now, obviously, some people are going to look at those numbers and say, oh, like that's very high, or you're going to have people that are going to look and say, oh, that's very low. Just remember that I'm speaking in very general terms. I want to speak to a very broad audience. I'm not specifically speaking to you as an individual. You might need a little bit more, you might need a little bit less, but in general terms, 150 minutes of moderate or 75 of vigorous intensity exercise per week. So from there, we'll move directly into number 3, and that's incorporating strength training. So we're talking about resistance training, which means we're going to be adding resistance in some method. So we're talking about dumbbells or barbells, resistance bands, anything that's going to add a stimulus to your muscle. So in addition to cardio, we're going to add strength training or resistance training to your fitness routine. It's obviously going to help you build some muscle, and that's going to be a key factor in increasing your metabolism. And that's obviously going to help you burn more calories throughout the day, not just during your time of activity. Now, it's super important to point out that when we're talking about this, the reason we're talking about this in this manner and separating the two is because typically speaking, cardiovascular activity, you'll burn calories during that cardiovascular activity, as to where strength training will burn calories during that activity and as well as afterwards. So that calorie burn continues after you've completed the strength training session. So studies show that anywhere from just 30 to 60 minutes of strength training or resistance training a week may be enough to make you less likely to die prematurely. Now, I'm reading directly from an actual study, so that's why I got to that point where it said die prematurely, and I was kind of unexpected. But the study actually shows people who do muscle strengthening workouts are less likely to die prematurely than those who don't, adding to previous evidence that strength training has long-term health benefits. The study found that 30 to 60 minutes a week of strength training may be enough. Now, there's one thing that I want to make very clear. Even when I'm looking at research like this study that I'm reading right now, does it match the demographic that I'm speaking to? You'll notice that a lot of research is done on very different demographics. So it's a lot of institutionalized individuals, whether it's schools, hospitals, nursing homes. You'll see studies done in that specific demographic. You need to make sure that your research is matching who you're speaking to. So I might be speaking to people who are resistance training in their 20s, and this study, this information I'm providing on strength training does not match you. And that's why I continue to say very general terms. I want to make sure that's perfectly clear. You might not get the hypertrophy or muscle development that you want from performing resistance training for that specific amount of time. And that's why personal training needs to be very individualized. And again, that no cookie cutter mentality, you need to make sure that your program is designed for you as an individual. All right, we got to move on from this topic because I'm going to end up speaking way too passionately about it, and then we won't ever move on to the next topic, which is number 4 is staying hydrated. So we want to make sure that we're drinking enough water that's going to help support our fat loss, and it's also going to benefit our overall health. That's key to say, overall health, because you're going to see fluctuations in your body weight day to day depending on your caloric intake, especially of carbohydrates, your water consumption, and how much you're sweating throughout the day. So people in different areas of the world want to be consuming a certain amount, and it's usually going to be more if you're in a hotter environment, and you want to minimally drink 8-ounce glasses of water per day. And a key thing, a key suggestion I would make to all my clients is having a bottle that's larger in size, and you're able to write the actual time of the day. So we have a marker of how often we need to be consuming water to make it through the day, and we can kind of ration that out throughout the day. So again, I'll just say we want to aim for 8-ounce glasses of water per day. Okay, so we'll move right into number 5, which is get enough sleep. Now, lack of sleep is going to disrupt your body's metabolism, and obviously that's going to make it more difficult for you to lose body fat. So we want to make sure that we're getting 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night. The conversation I have with my clients is that we want to prep our body just like we prep for our nutrition and we prep for our resistance training. We want to make sure that we prep our body for sleep in the same manner. Commonly, I'll suggest that we use an alarm clock instead of using our phone, and making sure all electronics are outside of our sleeping space and making that sleeping space solely a space for sleeping. And by saying that, I keep this a kid-friendly show. And moving on. We're going to move on to number 6, and that is practicing mindful eating. Now, this one could be a bit subjective depending on the person, but the big thing here is we want to pay attention to our hunger and our fullness cues. And I really want people to focus on avoiding any distractions while they're eating or preparing food, and that can actually help you make healthier food choices, and it's also going to help you control your food portions sizes. Now, what I want to concentrate here on is the mindfulness. We're being very aware of what we're doing in this situation when we're preparing our food, the choices we're making, and we're solely concentrating on that. We're not distracted by TV shows or watching a YouTube video or listening to a podcast. So I just want to make it perfectly clear here, what I'm describing is not intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is a very negative framework. Actually, it's a complete rejection of diet culture, and it's trying to reorganize people's thoughts and behaviors around their relationship with food, and it's actually rejecting diet culture entirely. That's part of their framework. So I just want to make it perfectly clear that being mindful and paying attention to your hunger and fullness cues and avoiding those distractions is not the same thing as intuitive eating. Okay, so moving on to number 7. Now, we talked about cardiovascular activity, we talked about strength training. Let's talk about number 7, trying interval training. So high intensity interval training, which people call HIIT, involves shorter bursts of intense exercise, and then it's followed by a period of rest. So this type of training has been shown to be super effective for fat loss, and the same amount of calories burned could be done in a shorter period of time than your typical steady state cardio. Drawback is, takes a lot more effort. Now, if you take a look at my personal history with training, you'll realize very quickly that I'm a huge fan of trying different modalities of training. I've tried powerlifting, strongman, bodybuilding, CrossFit. I've coached and performed in all of those, and I've enjoyed every single one of them, but I definitely have found what I find most enjoyable at the gym, and that's for me, bodybuilding. So that's one of the reasons why today I've included multiple methods of training for my fat loss tips. It's really important to me that you understand why I'm providing you with these tips. Now, number 8 is not a sales pitch, even though it's going to sound like one, because number 8 is seek support. So maybe it's time to consider working with some sort of healthcare professional, may it be a certified and qualified personal trainer or strength conditioning coach, or a registered dietitian that are going to help you create some sort of healthy, sustainable method for fat loss. Because having support is going to help you make those changes in your lifestyle, in your eating habits, in your physical activity, and just having someone there to cheer you on throughout that is a big motivator, and it's going to help keep you accountable towards your goals of fat loss. Now to the biggest point, most important point of all, and that is number 9, be consistent. To see results, you need to stick to a healthy diet and an exercise routine for a long period of time. Do not make too many lifestyle changes at once. That's going to make it very overwhelming and very difficult for you to sustain all that change in a short period of time. Now, I know I shared this in a previous podcast, but goal setting, when you set these goals, if you have this one large goal, set 10 goals on the way to that goal and have those celebrations for each goal you've achieved on the way. It's going to help you sustain because it's going to be more rewarding and it's going to be more beneficial to your mental and physical health. Now, I always say consistency is the most important part, and I left it for the very end because the people that have stuck around for this long get the reward. Okay, so the 6 ways to stay consistent consistent with fat loss is number one, planning ahead. You want to prepare your meals in advance and have a healthy snack on hand to help prevent impulse eating, okay? And it'll help you stay on track with your diet, especially if you're planning that snack. Number two, you want to keep a food diary. You want to track what you're eating, and that can help increase awareness of your eating habits. You're going to identify areas where you actually need to make better and healthier choices. Number three, setting realistic goals. It's super important to set those achievable goals in order to stay motivated and avoid that feeling of being overwhelmed and discouraged. Number four is seeking support. Again, we talked about support system of professionals. Now we're going to be talking about your family members, your friends, people that are around you and in your life daily, your coworkers. You're asking for their encouragement. You're asking them to help you stay accountable because these are the goals you've set forth. And if they are not supportive, if they are not encouraging, well, we're going to seek out a new support system. Number five is do not be hard on yourself. It is so normal to have setbacks or to make mistakes when you're trying to lose body fat. It is so important for you to be kind to yourself, and it's super important that you do not let one slip up, one thing derail you from your progress. If you do make a mistake, we have that goal tracking. We can go back and we can find out where we messed up, and we're going to start right from there, and we're going to get back on track, right? Yes, we are. Number six, and my final tip about consistency, we are going to find healthy ways to cope with stress. Stress can lead to a lot of unhealthy eating habits and a lot of unhealthy social behaviors as well. It's super important for us to find ways to cope with stress, such as exercise, meditation, or talking to a friend like the support system we just created. So the last thing I'll say, not a tip, just a reminder that the key to a successful journey in fitness and health is going to involve you finding a healthy and sustainable approach that's going to work for you. Just remember to always consult a healthcare professional or certified and qualified personal trainer for personalized advice. All right, if you've made it this far in the show, first off, I'd like to thank you. Secondly, I'd like to ask you one thing. And it's actually about like 8 different things, but with one intention, and that intention is support. I'd really appreciate it if you headed over to Spotify and followed the page. You can also give it your honest rating. I love feedback, positive or negative. It's only going to help me grow. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. You can hit the bell to set your notifications. You can like or dislike the page. And leave a comment if there's a topic you'd like me to cover in the future. Just remember, train your mind, train your body, but always train with maximum effort.